you a home grower looking for a little bit of help? Are you ready to learn as much as you can about your favorite hobby? The Homegrown Helpers brings you informative interviews from experienced growers that have taken the next steps in their journey and decided to help you grow top quality cannabis all in your home. Now welcome in our host, Rob Smith, along with this week's Homegrown Helper. Hey everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the new format of the Homegrown Helpers. I'm your host, Rob Smith, and I'm going to be chatting with growers just like you. Moving forward, we're scrapping the old format. Well, mostly scrapping the old format. We do have some consultant interviews in the books and lined up that we can't wait to share with you. But for a while, we are going to be interviewing and sharing these interviews with you of just home growers. You know, when I started this mission, it was going to be called Homegrown Journals, and it was going to be following growers along and having them do one journal of one complete grow, and then we were going to chat. And that was going to be the podcast. We were going to publish the journal as well, all for your educational opportunity. It was really hard for me to get growers to stay committed to keeping a journal. So I've kind of scrapped that, started the consultant side of the Homegrown Helpers, as I'm sure you've heard. And now that we've kind of run out of consultants, you know, in legal states, at least to do weekly podcast publishing, we're switching to home growers and interviewing people just like you that have something to share, that have a unique perspective, and want to help people that are starting their cannabis growing journey improve and lessen that learning curve and really help them learn to grow their own medicine and improve at growing their own medicine. So I really thank all of the growers that have committed to joining me so far, and I invite you, if you feel like you have something to share and a unique perspective, to apply to be on the show. Visit thehomegrownhelpers.com/apply. Pretty simple. thehomegrownhelpers.com/apply. Fill out the questionnaire, and every week I email the new applicants and people that I feel might make a good addition to the show and have, you know, something to add to what we've already done here at the Homegrown Helpers. So if you feel that's you, again, it's thehomegrownhelpers.com/apply, or visit our Instagram profile and you can find the link right in there to apply to the show. Speaking of the new Instagram profile, head on over to Linktree. That's linktr.ee/growcast. And you can find everything that we are up to there. There's a giveaway, there's resources, there's applications to be on the show, supporting the show, all sorts of stuff. The 7-day trial for mygrowpass.com, which is the membership program that we do here. So, you know, speaking of the membership program, we have a ton of new vendors, but to go along with our existing vendors, we are offering even more discounts and giveaways. So today's sponsor is my product, atlasplanttrainer.com, which today's guest, Matt, and I get into quite a bit, but I don't believe that is going to come until part 2 of the episode, which will come at you next week. But again, today's episode is brought to you by atlasplanttrainer.com. You can buy your customizable, click-together plant training and support solution at atlasplanttrainer.com. And, you know, I'd really appreciate your support because it's my product. But you can hear, as Matt details, that he regularly gets at least an extra ounce or 2 out of each harvest per plant. And with the investment that you need to make in Atlas Plant Trainer, it pays for itself within that first harvest, probably 2 or 3x, depending on what retail cannabis goes for in your area. But you can use the code GROWCAST to save yourself 10% on all of those sets at atlasplanttrainer.com. And again, all you have to do is listen to a very, you know, highly spoken testimonial from our next guest. That guest is Matt from Michigan. Matt is a longtime listener of GrowCast and the Homegrown Helpers and has tons to share with you. So we thank Matt for his time, and we hope that you enjoy the show. If you do, please feel free to give it a rating and review, subscribe and share so that you don't miss an episode. And welcome to today's show of the Homegrown Helpers. I have on the line with me Matt from Michigan. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you. What's going on, Rob?
Not much, buddy. You and I have been working with each other back and forth between grows and you being a Grow Pass member. So it's really a pleasure for me to connect with you on the phone and hear about your grow firsthand instead of just seeing pictures of it.
Yeah, awesome. It's kind of surreal to be talking to you. I've listened to you guys for hours and hours and hours. So
cool.
Seems like whenever I'm in my room, your guys' voices playing, you or Jordan. So
cool. Yeah, that's a pleasure.
Yeah.
When I started this journey, like I've said before, it was all about the home grower. And I didn't reach my goal of capturing people's journals, but this is the next best thing in my opinion. So I'm pumped to be talking to home growers all over the world.
Yeah, very cool.
So listeners, if you want to apply to be on the show, hit up thehomegrownhelpers.com/apply, I think, or there's a link in our Instagram bio that you can just apply, fill out the questionnaire, and we send out invites once a week and you can get yourself scheduled. We'll chat it up. So Matt, being in Michigan, I'm hoping that you can start us off with talking about the legal status of cannabis there in Michigan just a little bit, and then dig into what your current grow setup looks like and, bring the listeners into your grow room if you can.
Yeah, so Michigan's been medically legal, I think, for close to 12 years now.
Sounds right.
Going on 12, I believe.
Yep.
And we just went rec last year, and as of January 1st of this year, we've kind of got a few dispensaries up and running. Mostly they're all concentrated in Ann Arbor, which has kind of always been the, I guess, mecca of the area, if you will. They've been decriminalized in the city of Ann Arbor since like the 70s. It's always just been a little ticket there. So they're pretty liberal.
Wow.
As dispensaries are slowly coming online now, I think we've got one in my area. Our first one opened up like a week ago. Actually, it was shown on that Jimmy Kimmel show. There was this hilarious guy that was in line waiting for a dispensary and had a bunch of funny questions. Jimmy Kimmel ends up interviewing him later. It was pretty funny. But medical for about 12 years now. We were able to go rec last year. I think most people probably right now are still medical. I don't meet a whole lot of people that are doing rec because licenses, like I said, are just starting to get filtered through. And a lot of them are kind of, I'm not sure if I love it or hate it, but it seems like most of the medical licenses, if you really want to grow, are big. You know what I mean? Like they start at like 500 plants, which is, it's a pretty major operation at that point, and that's like their small licenses.
What's the home grow laws? Medically, I think you can have caregivers, but what's the rec home grow law?
Yeah, the rec laws are pretty liberal. I believe you get 12 plants. I'm still under a caregiver license right now.
Okay.
So all caregivers get 12 per patient, up to 5 patients, so up to 60 plants.
And that's 12 flowering, right?
No, 12 rooted plants.
Okay.
Yeah, so however you want to do them, Okay. If you want to run them in a cycle, you can flower 12 at a time.
Okay.
So, yeah, I believe rec is still the same way. I still think you get 12. You're allowed to have 2.5 ounces on your person, which is, I think, also pretty liberal.
That's a fair amount.
Yep. Yeah. So.
And what's the vibe? What's the vibe there now that it's legal? It's been legal for recreationally for just over a month. But what's the vibe between like the legacy/black market and the legal rec market there?
Again, rec is just kind of getting built because dispensaries are just coming online and they've got hours and hours and hours of wait. I mean, I think everybody still kind of gets it from their guy or whatever,
Right.
Seems to be still for the transition for right now. And we'll see how that goes. There's not an insane amount of tax on it. I believe we're getting 12% here, 6% sales, and then another 6% on top of that.
That's chump change.
Like special tax.
That's chump change compared to Cali's 45%.
Yeah, but I mean, these dispensaries are still charging like $20 to $25 a gram out here, which right now, which is crazy by the time you pay tax and everything on it too.
Right.
Seems like it's destined for failure, but I hope not. I mean, I hope they figure it out, and I hope it catches on, and maybe as more growers and come online, maybe those prices will go down. I hope.
So just to clarify, before we transition to your current grow setup, I think it's 6% sales tax and a 10% excise tax there in Michigan.
Is it 10? So 16?
Yeah, but 16, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's another state that's under 20. So Sorry, Colorado charges 15% and 15% excise tax, so that's 30. Yeah, I don't think there's another state that comes in under 20%, combined for a cannabis tax. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, right now the other problems they're having is there really haven't been any legal rec grows yet. So there really can't be any. Since they've just got started, and it takes a while for these plants to start from seed or clone.
Sure.
You're looking at 3 or 4 months before they're harvested. None of these plants have been able to legally been grown under rec yet. So the market's kind of just running off of Michigan allowed dispensaries to sell half of their stock from medical as rec now. So that's kind of what they're running off of right now. And that might also be a reason that the supply and demand is driving the price up,
Right. It automatically created a middleman as well. So the medical dispensaries want to be able to make their money. So they're selling it, at a premium dollar to the rec dispensaries.
Right.
And then that rec dispensary needs to make money to cover their overhead in operating a dispensary. So
yeah,
it's definitely not cheap. Like recreational or legal cannabis is not cheap, and it's not cheap to do, and it's not cheap to purchase. And like you said, hopefully, with the supply going up, but who knows? If you're years away from that, I assume.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll see.
So Matt, why don't we dig into what your current grow setup looks like?
Okay. So I know you're not a fan of this, but I run a perpetual grow. I have 2 tents.
We'll dig into that later.
Total.
We'll dig into that later.
Okay. Yeah. I've got 3 tents total. I have a veg, a flower, and a drying tent. It gets pretty dry here in Michigan, so we need to run a dry tent so things don't dry up too fast and end up trapping all that chlorophyll in there and coughing or whatever, making it too harsh. So my veg tent is a 4x8. I have a NFT table in there, which is basically like an underground stream is what it kind of is like. It's a nutrient flood table or flow table, they're called. A homemade thing out of a tote. I just made it myself. And that is how you transition from your clone to your into the rockwool cubes and pull the roots out the bottom of the rockwool so they can go into the next step, which is deep water culture buckets. So we run all deep water culture buckets here in individual buckets. We don't use a recirculating system. And yeah, each plant gets its own 5-gallon bucket. Buckets are changed whenever they drink their newts. So about every 4 or 5 days. Veg goes a little longer because the plants are still smaller. And then once they get to the size and once I get them trained where I want them to be, they pop over into the flower tent. And that is a 10x10. Currently running just 2 Fluence bulbs in there, 2 Fluence LED lights. It's their new ones. The 2Xs is what I run because I don't supplement with CO2. We're just pulling outside air. And so I've got 2 of those lights running in there. They cover a 4x4 area. So I try to get my plants to be about the size of a 2-foot by 2-foot square. So I can run 4 of them under each light and they all get covered pretty well. And with the proper training and stuff like that, you get a whole nice big canopy, even all getting nice light coverage. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. I've been using the Atlas Platin trainers, actually. I've been doing a lot with those. And
right on.
I've got wheels for these buckets now. Anybody that grows in DWC knows that as you change your buckets all the time, it doesn't really make it very conducive for trellising or anything like that because your plants need to be able to be lifted. So I've kind of come up with a system. You guys can check it out on my Instagram account. And if you have any questions, of course, hit me up. But a system where you can roll the bucket out.
You got to plug your Instagram account. You didn't tell us where you're at.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Doctilla's Garden, DOCTILLAS, Doctilla's Garden. There's some pretty good pictures there. I don't have everything on there that I should probably, but it's kind of new to me. I've been on there for a few months. But yeah, I'm trying to put stuff up there just to help others that are in deep water culture and maybe running into problems that I always ran into for years and years before I started coming up with all these different solutions. So, anyways, I'm on wheels. The buckets roll out from underneath the lights. With those Atlas plant trainers, I've built individual trellises for each bucket that are attached right to the lid. So when you lift the lid or the net pot where the plant sits, you can lift it right out of the bucket, change the bucket out, put a clean bucket in with brand new newts, slide it back under the light, and they're good for another 4 or 5 days.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute out of this episode and tell you about one of our brand new partners here at mygrowpass.com, and that's Diamond Cutco. DiamondCutco.com. Save yourself 10% by using code GROWCAST, or become a member when we open up the doors and save 20% on all of their fine trimming products. Diamond Cutco is committed to supporting the hardworking trim teams and individual trimmers across the world. With innovative styles and designs, they cater to the connoisseur, and they focus their premium products exclusively on the cannabis grower. With conscious ergonomic designs and fatigue-reducing innovations, the blades stay extremely sharp and last. With their trimming service, scissors have been well received across the industry and featured in magazines such as High Times. So head on over to diamondcutco.com, save yourself 10% using code GROWCAST, or you can become a member at mygrowpass.com and test your luck in our 5K quarterly giveaway, where they're giving away 10 pairs of scissors to 5 lucky winners, 2 scissors each. So check out diamondcutco.com and grab yours today. So typically, you said you're a caregiver, you're allowed 12 plants per patient. How many plants do you typically get into that 10 by 10 flower tent?
So the tent is enormous. It's way bigger than what I need. I always had, aspirations of going bigger, but honestly, caregiver-wise, it's just me and I have one patient right now, so I'm allowed 24 plants. I usually fit 8 in there.
Yeah.
I run those 2 lights right now, so there's a lot of room to walk around. I mean, it's a big, spacious area. Honestly, I could really pack a whole lot more in there if I wanted to, but there's no need. I mean, I don't really have the plant count, and yeah, I just like the space, a lot of airflow. I can get all around my plants if I need to. So
that's great. I love that concept, but I know there's people listening right now that are like, hey man, if you got the space and the plant count, like pack those plants in there, like fill up that space.
Yeah.
Talk a little, if you can grow the plants. And I get that concept as well. Talk a little bit about why you don't put more than 8 plants in there, and like the benefit that you see by allowing space, whether it's for you to work, like I used to break plants when, I'm a big dude.
Yeah.
And my wife calls me a bull in a china shop all the time.
Right. I'm kind of the same way.
So like I used to bump into plants, accidentally break off a branch or whatever when they were too packed in, because I always thought I was smaller than I am. So, talk a little bit about what, brought you that decision to leave more space in the room and allow the plants to grow.
Well, airflow is one, that's big. I don't want to get anything in there. Again, I'm trying to produce a very, very clean product. So I don't want any molds or anything like that. So airflow is huge for that. Changing out buckets is a thing that dirt growers don't need to worry about. Like once you put a plant on the ground, it stays there and you just water on the top usually, So in GWC, that's one of the drawbacks of that is that chore. So to be able to lift these plants and move them around, if you're pulling them out and lifting and moving them all the time, that's something hard to do if you're really, really packed in there. And I mean, plus being allowed 24 plants as a perpetual grower, I've usually got 8 in the cloning process. They're getting roots, 8 in the veg process, and about 8 in the tent, So that's my 24 plant count.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So they're all being used. They're just all in different stages
Gotcha.
of the grow. So they are all there. And another reason, really, I mean, probably if I'm being completely honest with you guys and myself, is time. I work a full-time job. I've got a little one running around here.
Bingo.
2-year-old. Or about to be 2 next month. And that's a full-time job in itself. So then to put this on top of it, this is a very busy life I run around here. So
I always tell new growers, like, don't do more than what you can handle. Like, I'd rather have you grow 2 or 3 plants really well than 6 plants mediocrely, and watering and caring for them half as much as they deserve to be cared for. So I'm really glad you went in that direction, Matt. I wanted to talk about that perpetual grow that you said that I wasn't a fan of. Talk about, your cycle and why I might not be a fan of that.
Well, I've heard you bring it up before. I think it was on one of our the AMAs that you guys do for the members.
Yep.
You don't like that you can't clean. There's not an end of cycle where you get in there and clean everything up and reset.
do a full deep clean.
Right. Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. And I understand that.
Yep.
Luckily, knock on this wood table here, I have not run into problems. I keep a very, very clean room. That's like a big, big part of what we do here. We're preventative all the way. Nobody goes in my room. My cousin comes over to help occasionally, and he washes buckets and things like that. He's got his own special set of shoes that I bought him that he's only allowed to wear here. I change all my clothes if I'm ever outside or if I'm anywhere outdoors. I mean, if I go out to let the dog out and I step on the sidewalk, those clothes come off. You know what I mean? Before I ever go downstairs. So, yeah, cleanliness is paramount here. And luckily, with all that prevention, we haven't had any problems with that. There's not a lot of dirt. There's not a lot of like splashing. Everything stays contained in its buckets. So everything stays pretty clean. But I do understand what you're saying. Like, it would be a nice check to be able to shut everything down and clean it once in a while. But I guess the reason I like the perpetual grow is that I've always got something in every stage. So from a learning standpoint, from an educational standpoint, just teaching myself, I've always got stuff to tinker with. If I want to try something new on veg, I don't have to wait until a new cycle, and try to remember what it was I wanted to try. Like, I can try stuff tomorrow, because I have stuff in veg all the time, or I have stuff in flower all the time. So if I want to add something in, I can start it right away, and really see if it makes a difference or not right away without sitting there and thinking about it or trying to remember it, making notes, to use that in the future. So that's one of the things I really like. So I'm able to kind of like constantly work on my craft on every step of the plant all the time, which really helps, I think, as far as me developing as a grower. So that's kind of why I really like doing it that way. Plus the space issue, I mean, I could probably fit, for sure, I could pack 24 plants into that 10 by 10, but I just like to have more space, just room to work. So
cool.
That's kind of why I do it. And it seems to work for me. So
I have lots of points there. Do you put 2 new plants in your flower room every week?
No, I don't. I try to do them in sets of 4.
Okay.
So a whole light covers 4 plants, 2 by 2 by, 16 square foot, I guess. But
sure.
Yeah. So I change them out. I try to get 4 plants in under a light at the same time, and then harvest the other 4. So there's 2 sets of 4 in my bloom tent, and they're usually about 6 weeks apart.
Okay. Somewhere
in that range.
Okay.
I grow to about 12 weeks most of the time. Most hybrids that I run through there, some come out after 11 weeks, but I'd never put anything on water until at least 10 weeks in. So that's from the day that they get switched to 12-12. And I know people kind of get mixed up on this because some people are talking about flower starting when they actually see the first flowers.
Yep.
Yeah. And some people talk about flower when you switch to 12-12. So everybody's dates are different, So people saying that they're finishing in 7 weeks, I'm assuming those people are talking about because they're starting when they see the flowers, So for me, that would be like a 9-week grow, I think, is the way I talk about it. But
yeah. So there are times that you have a plant in your flower room for 12 weeks. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All the time, actually. Like, well, maybe not 12. 12 is more of my sativa leaning ones.
Yep.
My indica leaving ones, 11 weeks. So, I'll leave
Okay.
them on nutrients for almost 10 weeks in there. And then I flush them for a week. I put them under a blue light during that flushing time to help build some more of that resin. And then I pop them out of the tent completely into a dark room for a couple days while we wait to start harvesting.
Okay.
So,
wow. That's a lot to dig into, my friend.
Yeah, there's a lot there. The reason I like to take them a little longer is because I don't like the real rushy, nervousy highs that you get if you pick them too soon. We've got plenty of time here. I'm not under a deadline or anything like that.
Right.
And I feel like the plant's really mature. You get a lot of flavor, a lot of terpene buildup, and a lot of resin there towards those last week or two if you just let them hang out,
Yeah, man. Completely different highs. Listeners, if you've never experienced or experimented with this, I strongly suggest that if you can run 2 plants of the, same phenotype, take one or half. I mean, preferably one, because you want to start the flush. Take one when you don't even see any amber trichomes, maybe even when there's some clear heads still, and then take the other one when it's mostly amber, and experience the difference in those highs. Like Matt was saying, completely different. I've never really gotten paranoid off cannabis. I've been smoking weed for over 20 years now, but I do know the energy versus the couch lock, and just experiment with that. I would bet, Matt, that the majority of people are not referring to days of flower after you start seeing the flower. I would be interested to talk to some of the breeders that we actually have on the breeder feature over on Growcast to see how they feel about that. Like, are the days that they're quoting on their package for flower, are those from when pre-flowers are shown, or is that time in, under 12/12? That'll be an interesting addition into that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are talking like 65, 70 days anyways. So that's 10 weeks basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but some strains aren't showing pre-flowers for 2 to 3 weeks,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's usually when they all show, at least 2 weeks.
Right. So, I mean, that's 7 or 8 weeks of flower. And, conversely, Matt, I had an MOB strain that had amber trichomes on day 42 in the room.
Wow. Yeah, I've never seen that yet.
And I start all of my plants with like at least 48 hours of darkness to let them know that, hey, flower's coming. And, started counting day one as soon as the lights went on. So 42 days in the room, and there were considerable amber trichomes to the point that I started like over flushing, because I'm like, if I start 2 weeks flushing now, like these are all going to be amber.
Wow.
So mega flushing, super flushing at that point in time.
Yeah, that's crazy, Rob. Yeah, usually 6 weeks in, I'm 42 days, I guess 6 weeks or the start of week 7, I guess. Yeah. At that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still got white pistils all over my flowers usually at that point,
Yeah, if you can get your hands on this MOB strain, I mean, I was getting 6 or 7 turns in a room over the course of a year.
Wow.
As opposed to, 5.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, a couple things. I want to lead right into IPM because you kind of touched on it. Cleanliness is paramount. Absolutely. You've heard it on the Homegrown Helpers over and over and over again from 36 consultant interviews. But I want you to touch upon, what you do if there is a problem. Do you have any preventatives? But think about the setup that you have, and what I envision as being really convenient for your setup is that you've got lots of little microsystems in a larger ecosystem. So if you were to have a problem, or even preventatives, like I'm a big fan of spraying the perimeter and the outside of spaces.
Right.
So you can do a lot of preventative maintenance on the outside of your tents and never really have to worry about, anything getting, on or really near your plants if you shut down all your air circulation and stuff.
Yeah.
And you also have the ability that, if you're only running 8 plants in that perpetual flower room and you do have a problem and you do need to do a deep clean, you harvest and then you're left with 4 plants. And I'm sure with the wheels and the Atlas Plant Trainer, those 4 plants can easily come out of the tent. You can do a deep clean. You can even quarantine those 4 plants, or veg plants if you need to. So I envision that you've built a really good setup, and I'm impressed to hear all of your steps here. Can you walk us through, what happens if you do come across a problem with your IPM?
So recently I had some fungus gnats to fight. So I'll kind of give you my run through of that. With the plants constantly being in water, fungus gnats can be a real pain in the ass, I guess. I don't know how else to say it.
Right, because they never go away until shit dries out.
Right.
They feed on the moisture.
Yes, and that's where they're laying their eggs, and their larvae is feeding on your roots, and it can be a whole mess if they get too bad. So I'm not sure how they got in. Maybe it came from upstairs, some fruit from up there in the kitchen or something like that. I'm not sure how they got down there, but once they got there, it was a pain because every time you lift a lid up to change a bucket out, here come a couple more gnats, and they're down in the water. So what I was able to do there, because I have different rooms set up, is I fought them off in veg and pretty much killed them out in veg. Let the flower room. I used like the strips and the sticky pads, all that stuff, the best I could in there because I didn't really want to be messing around too much. I used a little hydrogen peroxide to kill the larvae in there just to fight them back. So to kill them off in veg, I put fans over the top of the buckets so that there's too much air. I've got box fans blowing over. So there's too much air for the fungus to have to fly through to get to the bucket now. And then what I was doing is when I lifted the roots to change the buckets, I would spray the root ball down with hydrogen peroxide and kill all the larvae that's on there, because it kills those. Hydrogen peroxide would kill the larvae pretty much on contact. And then I would let it drip off, and then I would put it into a rinse bucket, and then that would rinse the hydrogen peroxide off the roots and then into the newts. And that took about 2 weeks doing that, which was a little more work, but not that hard, to remove them from veg. And then as the flowers of that room, of the flower room, came out and the buckets were able to come out, the new buckets going in were all clean already. Again, fans in the flower room, just box fans over the top of the buckets so that the gnats couldn't get in there. And here we are probably a month and a half after the issue started, and I've got them all cleaned up. I don't see them anymore. They're gone. So I was able to do it that way, by beating them before they get into the flower room,
Yep. So do you have a policy that you don't move problem plants into the flower room?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I mean, we've got enough marching in our system that if you lose a couple or anything like that, it's not a big deal. If you have to make a cut, you have to make a cut. I'd much rather sacrifice a plant than have to sacrifice a whole 3 months worth,
Totally. I'd rather have you wait 2 or 3 weeks to put something in the flower instead of wasting 6 weeks and getting really shitty returns. Absolutely. Or having to chop them, when they're flowering and you have to cut them down because you can't treat them at that point in time,
Yeah. And again, with that March system, there's always another one coming. So you've got a backup right behind it, so it's really not that big of a loss. Now you're starting over again with a clone from the start,
Right. Do you do any beneficial sprays, any, amazing Dr. Zymes or anything like that?
Yeah, I've got some Dr. Zymes here, a sample from you guys, and I have yet to use it. What I do is, so if I get a clone from somewhere else, I've been growing a lot of seeds. I kind of been pheno hunting lately. I've just something to do. I'm more of a hobbyist than anything, so it intrigues me, all the different phenotypes. So I've been growing a lot from seed lately, but that's newer. I always grew from clone before this, up until about maybe 6 months ago. I was always growing from clones, and I've got clones from guys that I knew were dirty. I know these guys have bugs, and so I had to make sure that I wasn't bringing their stuff into my room.
Right.
So what I did with what I always did was I would bring the clones, I would take them out, and I wouldn't even bring them into my house. I'd leave them out in the garage. And I would mix up some pesticides into some big jars that I have. I have these like gallon-sized pickle jars, basically. So I mixed up a big solution, and what I would do is I would take the clones and throw them right in that solution, like completely submerged, and let them sit in there for a little, good minute or two, completely submerged in these pesticides. And then when I bring them out, then I make a clean cut on them and start them into their Rockwell cubes to start the cloning process. All this is still going out in my garage. That jar I leave out there next to those clones, and every day or two I go out there and I resubmerge those plants into that stuff, pull it out, let them drip off, shake them off, pop them back into the dome. Do that over and over again for about a week, and I think most bugs, larvae, will be killed. Bugs will be killed. Their eggs will have hatched by then, especially spider mites. I think they hatch in like 2 or 3 days.
Yep. So
after a week of doing that over and over again, you might lose a clone or two, but most of them are going to survive. Then I take those plants that I now trust at that point to be clean, bring those down, and grow those out. And those will be mother plants. So I'm taking nothing off the bottom, nothing that's touched anything near the pesticide. I take a few tops off that mother plant, and then those are my clean clones now. I'll kill that mother plant off. I don't want to grow that out because of its contact with the pesticides. I don't know what stays in there. I'm not sure. So I'd rather just start a clean generation, a clean brand new cycle. And then those will become my genetics that I'm using from there on. And then I just kill off the other plant and get rid of her.
Okay.
So that's always seemed to help. I mean, like I said, I've taken dirty clones from guys that I know are dirty and brought them in. I've got, I know a good friend of mine that does living soil, and like his stuff's just crawling, like those guys are no-till. They do these big giant beds,
Right.
And
they welcome the bugs. They welcome the bugs.
Yeah, they love them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like they got like it's crazy. I hate even going into this house. You know what I mean? Like, it freaks me out. Like,
Well, the beneficial bugs need really bad bugs to feed on and keep them around. Because if the beneficial bugs don't have things to feed on, then they're going to die. And then the bad bugs come back in. So it's kind of a balancing system with that, you know?
yeah. The beneficials, I've heard that they're kind of farming the bad bugs. They won't completely kill their crop either. So there's always bad bugs. There's always good bugs. It's just the way the whole ecosystem works. So that's what they're building, really, is just a ecosystem. They raise worms to go through and help eat the old roots. And, it's a really interesting system.
Yeah, totally.
Once you get it going. But a lot of work those guys put in. So,
Matt, I'm really impressed with your IPM protocols. I'm really impressed to hear, you're going through your explanation, and I'm chomping at the bit. I didn't want to interrupt you. But then you kind of took that next step and tossed the original plant out after it grew out, and you were able to take some cuttings from that. But I do need to throw in a word of caution here. Depending on the pesticides that you're using and how harsh they can be, some of those things can become systemic and can be passed on from generation to generation. So, last year sometime, 86% of the clones that were tested out of California dispensaries were found to be tested with illegal pesticides. And that was tracked back to potentially up to 5 generations of plants before that clone, when, those plants were last sprayed. So that means like the mother was sprayed, then a cutting, and then a cutting from that and cutting from that.
Right.
5 generations later, there were still traces specifically of neem oil that I know of that become systemic. But I imagine things like Eagle 20 and some of that other really nasty stuff that kills everything, gets inside that cellular wall and kind of gets carried on from cutting to cutting. So just be mindful of that. It sounds like you're not doing that right now because you're growing from seed. But, if you return to the clone game, and anybody else out there that's listening, just keep that in mind, that systemic nature of some of those pesticides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to use, I'm not using anything crazy like Eagle 20. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't use neem oil either.
From what I gather of you, Matt, I don't expect you're an Eagle 20 user, but neem oil is still one of those things that's out there. You listen to me enough, so I'm sure you're not using that anymore.
No, yeah.
And if you are, you won't be after this conversation. So, I just wanted to put that out there so everybody can learn from it as well.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And when we get back, we are going to talk, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to let Matt talk about deep water culture and kind of the lessons learned that he is trying to help you guys not have to learn on your own.
Absolutely. Sounds good.